everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Up next, the Another View Roundtable with thoughtful and insightful conversation about race, racism, and where we go from here. Once the protests are over and there are enough copies of the book White Fragility for everyone who wants to read it, then what? Are we done? Does it mean racism and racist actions go away? What policies must change? What systems must change? How do we bring our country back together after so much strife? Alvean Lyons, Daun, Hester, Pretlow, and Allison Moore share their thoughts next on Another View, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Happy anniversary, Another View. This is our 10th season on the air. Can you believe it? We made it 10 years on the air. For the past 10 years, we brought you conversation and insight into the African-American community. We are grateful for your support of our program, and here's to 10 more years to come. So we've got lots to talk about with our Another View Roundtable, so let's meet our pundits. She's Virginia's relationship expert and host of the Lion's Den, heard on Hampton University Radio WHOV-FM, Ms. Alvean Lyons. How are you, Alvean?
I am wonderful. Good afternoon to some of my favorite people on the planet.
It is so good to see your face and hear you. We have Zoom up so we can watch each other as we conduct our conversation. She cares about the city of Norfolk and its finances. Meet Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester. Hey, Daun, how you doing?
Hey, everyone. It's good to see everybody, and thank you to the listening audience, too.
Absolutely. 10 years. Can you believe it? She's gearing up for the fall semester. Political science professor Carol Pretlow. How you doing, Carol?
Oh, wonderful. Glad to talk to everybody.
I know, Carol, we miss you.
I miss you, too.
And she's an entrepreneur, talk show host, and clean comedian, Ms. Allison Moore. Hey, Allison, how you doing?
Hey, y'all. Hey. I miss y'all.
We miss you, too. Have you been behaving?
No. Every day I be like, today is a new day. I'm going to do it today. And then the last 30 seconds, I'm like, dang it, I got to start over tomorrow.
Got to start all over again. So in our introduction, I know I talked about where do we go from here, and we're going to talk about that. But I got to tell you, this coronavirus pandemic is still running rampant. It is still adversely affecting all of us, but disproportionately affecting the African-American community. So I want to talk to you all, or I want you to talk to the audience about why it is so critical that we continue to wear our masks, to social distance, and to do the things that we know help to prevent catching COVID-19, catching this virus. Why do we fight wearing the mask so much, Alvean?
Well, I think some of that is just sort of the American way. We rebel against structure. To be American is to do things the way that you do them, is to be free to have the life that you want. And so the idea of someone else, determining some kind of constraint around your life, we have a natural response of rebelliousness towards that. I mean, biblically, we talk about like the Jezebel spirit. We just, we refuse, the Korah spirit, rebelliousness, so we have to be very careful about that because the cost is extreme for us. And we often, unfortunately, as people of color, sometimes maintain comorbidities. So there are multiple things that can be true for us at the same time, whether that's high blood pressure or diabetes or asthma. I mean, there are other factors that we have a disproportionate representation of in the medical journals, when you're looking at an analysis of those things. And this particular kind of virus is more damaging when there is already another comorbidity.
Sure.
So it's extraordinarily important that even though we may perceive ourselves to be healthy and strong and we work hard and, we play hard and all of those things, we don't realize how many people we go home to every day undiagnosed, because we as people of color don't like to go to the doctor. So half the time we don't know what we've got. You know, so we're coming home undiagnosed to people that we love, and they may be going through some things we didn't even know about that made them unexpectedly susceptible to the virus. So we owe it to each other. If Black lives really matter, let them matter on every level. Let us take care of each other's Black lives also by being responsible enough to, even if we ourselves don't feel vulnerable, the people that we love may be, and we need to love them enough to not put them in compromising situations.
Allison, it's said now that it's your generation, it's the millennials and younger that are contracting COVID-19 more rapidly. In the Hampton Roads, numbers are going up as opposed to going down. What do you say to folks who you run into who say, look, I can't deal with this mask thing?
I'm not really running into people who say it in a way, or at least my circle, they're not saying, I just don't want to wear some out here in these streets. It's some of this is unavoidable for me to not be. So my generation, I'm 37. So right now we are absolutely kings and queens in the sandwich situation. We're taking care of our parents. We have younger children. We are in situations where we have to move more frequently than others. Personally, I got a 6-year-old. I have older people in my family. I have teenagers. So I would like to just stay locked in under a cave, but I can't. And I'm finding that a lot of the millennial generation, we're just trying to survive. We would like to stay home, but we can't. Some of the people that I'm looking at that are just like, I don't want to wear a mask because I don't like wearing masks, that's a whole different thing. And those are not my friends that I'm texting. They're not in the text group.
Daun, what do you think? What do we need to say, particularly to the African-American community, about protecting ourselves?
That we want to live. And because we want to live, we need to protect ourselves by physically distancing, wearing a mask, and washing the hands all day long. And you're going to have to separate, too, from your family. Or when you're with your family, you're going to have to wear the mask. Because everybody doesn't know where everybody has been. And so you don't know what you're bringing in or potentially bringing in. And, because some of us are asymptomatic, we just need to go get the test. When you hear there's a free test, go get it. I had the antibody test just to see if I'd had it before. And thank goodness it was negative. But that means in, like 3-4 weeks, I'm going to go get another test again because I just don't know. I'm wearing the mask everywhere I go, gloves on my hands when I'm pumping gas at the gas station, hand sanitizer till your hands get dry. But you have to do all of those things to protect yourself and those around you that you love. We just cannot, we just can't let others let us die because we don't want to do the things we need to do that we know we can do in order to survive this thing, because we don't know how long it's going to last. And without having guide from the federal government, it is impacting our lives, and you just see that all across the country. This is not a hoax. It is happening. Younger people, yes, are getting sick now, but we don't, when they say the death rate is going down, however, we don't know with our young people because they are just beginning to present and go to hospitals. So we don't know what the death rate is going to be. So I just say love yourself enough and love others enough to just do what you're supposed to do.
Carol, you're our elder stateswoman of the group. How are you feeling in terms of vulnerability as a senior?
Well, I, of course, wear the mask. And one of the things that I think is practical is that if I'm walking down the street and I don't see anybody for a block or two, I might pull it down because I have asthma, and to cover my nose and mouth makes breathing difficult. So it's up and down and up and down. But, of course, if I'm in a situation where, say, the mall or a bookstore or any restaurant and hall, I have the mask on. Now, for those people who are fashion-oriented, there are now all kinds of choices that can coordinate with any outfit you have. And that's a positive note. I mean, it doesn't make it something that you want to do, but do it to protect everybody else and to save yourself, your family, your friends, your neighbors, everybody.
Well, Carol, we know you are the fashionista, so I am quite sure you have some matching masks. And I'm curious, though, as you gear up for the school year, what are you thinking in terms of having getting back in the classroom, Carol?
Okay. Well, what has happened here in Norfolk State, and particularly in my department, we have some of us will be online only. And of course, I'm computer challenged, so I'll be in the classroom, but there are only 3 days a week. And then there will be spacing, and then encouraging and having masks will be mandatory. So there are a lot of adjustments because, believe it or not, I'm running into a lot of students who I taught online the end of last semester who say they don't get as much, or they don't feel that they are accomplishing as much online as they were in the classroom. So there are some adjustments to be made.
Let's talk to Tiffany in Virginia Beach. Hi, Tiffany. You're on the air.
Hey. I just wanted to call in. You asked a question about what can we do to get millennials to take this more serious, to wear masks, to wash hands. Mm-hmm. I think that the sad thing is a lot of people that I know they don't know anyone that has died from it. All they do is they see the numbers, and even though 130,000 people is a lot of people, it's not tangible. And so I just wanted to call in and say that I've even heard somebody as close to me as my sister-in-law say that this is a government hoax. It's not real, for whatever reason. And it's just. I definitely think it's a lack of understanding and education and ignorance. But I will say that I just wanted to share, my story. I have a cousin who was about 45. He went to Grambling State in Louisiana, Ouachita High School, a very intelligent young man. Like I said, again, he's 45. He has a son that's 15, a daughter that's 7. And he died on Sunday from COVID. And he was sick. And people around him had told him to go to the hospital, but he didn't go for whatever reason. He got tested for COVID on Friday, but he didn't go to the hospital, and he didn't have the results back. And so, because he didn't take it seriously, even though cases are exploding in Texas, he died. And now he has a 15-year-old African-American son and a 7-year-old daughter that no longer have a father. And it's sad. It's sad that people aren't taking it seriously.
Tiffany,
share that.
Thank you for sharing that, and our condolences to you and your family. I know how tough that must be. Alvean, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, it breaks my heart to hear stuff like that because many of these situations can be prevented. These are not losses that have to happen. There are things that, unfortunately, we will never be able to control. It's the human condition. But there are things that we can minimize by doing our due diligence to not create opportunity for things to get out of hand very quickly. We have no idea. The human body is such a complex structure. You have no idea how something is going to respond inside of your body versus how it responded for the neighbors. Sometimes, unfortunately, you're hearing people say that, oh, it's like the flu. You'll be sick for a couple of days. You'll be fine. So-and-so had it and they barely even knew that they had it. So people are using this anecdotal information as if it were some real blueprint for what their own experience would be, and they're getting lackadaisical about it. And in so doing, it is costing it has a real price associated with it, that there are no refunds. There's no, let me go back and take this more seriously after you're gone, after you're really ill. And what's scariest, and I have to sometimes explain this where my teenage son is concerned. My son is a juvenile diabetic, and he's still working. So I constantly have to talk to him about what he's doing and don't let up. And I know everybody else is relaxing. But I said, let me explain something to you. The worst part about this is not just that the virus itself is so strong. It's that it's so contagious that people will not be able to come see you.
Yeah.
So when folks get sick, the hardest part is most of them die alone.
Yeah.
You will not even be able to have the people you love by your side. So while you're out there thinking, I can handle this, I'm strong enough, let me tell you what most folks aren't strong enough for. To not get a chance to say goodbye to the people that they love, to not hold your kid one more time, to not kiss the person you love, to not hear the voice of your mother, your father, your siblings, your cousins, to be able to only see them through glass at best. And that last moment, you are completely by yourself. That is something that none of us want to be the way that we end our lives. So if you don't hear anything else I'm saying, let me just tell you, it is not the human condition for us to want to die by ourselves.
That is so true. I want to ask you, Alvean, and then you, Allison, in particular, because you guys still have students that are or kids that are school aged. Are you struggling with what you're going to do in terms of sending them back to school in September? Alvean, since you're already up, go ahead. We'll start with you, and then we'll go to Allison.
So, not me. I said, look, we're doing this thing online. I don't care what anybody else is doing. We're doing this online. So no disrespect to anybody who wants to do things differently. That is 100% your choice. It's just that given, as I mentioned, the fact that he is a juvenile diabetic, I am not interested in creating opportunity upon opportunity for him to have to figure out how he can fight this in some way. I have been he was diagnosed when he was 4. I've spent the last 14 years of my life trying to keep him healthy and alive so that he can live the cure one day. What I'm not going to do is take unnecessary risk where that is concerned. So he will be doing school online this fall without question.
Allison, what about you? Have you been struggling with this?
I think I've been struggling with it since they first sent them kids home. But my children, we're going to have to figure it out, if that makes sense. Now, I'm in a different headspace with it being the summer, and now I have that to prepare for. So emotionally and mentally, I am getting my mind right and wrapping around it. I mean, it's just a non-negotiable. I'm not going to insert my kids into that type of environment because I understand how it disproportionately affects us. I understand how my resources are limited, my whatever, if my asthmatic child is not asymptomatic, and then there's a whole huge issue. I got a 6-year-old. It's a lot going. I have a first grader, so to say keep your mask up and stay away from it's just not happening. He's not understanding it. So what I've been doing these last couple of days is trying to be strategic with what type of very small community that I'm going to create because I do feel like I need my children to be interacting with other peers and people their age or whatever, but I'm just trying to figure out how that looks. So I'm looking at maybe 1 or 2 trusted girlfriends that have the same age children that we can maybe swap once a week and you do social studies. I'm really trying to figure out the way that I can be the most impactful as a homeschool mom with doing the smallest amount of work. Is that possible? I don't really want to do nothing, but I want to be able to say that I did some good things. I'm really trying to get the award of Homeschooling Mom Award with minimal effort at best. How? Somebody help. I hate it here.
Daun, we already know that our children struggle in school, that there is a gap in terms of learning and in the types of environments that are normally available for our kids to go to school. Do you think more parents are going to go the homeschool route, or is that unrealistic for parents in the Black community in particular, because everybody's got to work?
I think it's both. We're going to be doing more virtual. We're going to have to learn how to do that, which means with most of the public school system, your child is going to have to get up. You're going to have to get them up. And you're going to have to make sure that they're online when the teacher is online providing the instruction. Then you're going to have to make sure that they're doing the work afterwards that they have to do. So there's a lot on that end. So I think the virtual instruction from the teachers is going to get better because they've been learning since we shut down in March. But parents have to do the same thing on their end. The other part of your question is, our parents, especially in the African American and brown community, are essential workers. So they've got to go to work.
Right.
So then who is going to be the one to help them, like Allison was talking about, to make sure that the child is on the computer? Then the other thing is, are all of the districts going to spend that money, which they have to, in my opinion, there's no choice about it, and provide those hotspots to the families that don't have those Chromebooks, because it's just not a part of their plans. So you have to provide that for every child in the household, not just one. Because if there are 3 children in the house, there need to be 3 Chromebooks, because the babies you're going to have to make them work at the same time. So, it's a lot to it, and I'm not hearing the answers to those questions yet from districts. And so I do think that it's important that we continue to have those conversations, especially for parents who are making the choice if they're going to send their child to school 2 days a week and keep them home 3 days or whatever. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, and you're going to have to find your circle, just like Allison was saying, to make sure that your children are getting what they need, because they can't get further behind. They're already behind. They can't get further behind.
Yeah, I am concerned about that. Allison, I saw you react when Daun said Chromebooks. What?
Yes. Because I'm in Hampton City. That's a school district that my children are a part of, and they don't get Chromebooks until a certain age. So I have 3 children, 2 are in high school, 1 in elementary. So my 2 olders had one, but my elementary school student who needed the most supervision, attention, and whatever did not. And so then therefore that became you sit over here with my iPad that I need to be working on while I believe that is definitely a solution, and I am one of those people that's in a situation where I have access to resources a little bit more than maybe some of my other brothers and sisters in my community. So it's hard for me. So I know that it's hard for other people who may not have that access. However, I am excited. One thing that I can say about this experience is I have been more engaged in what my children are learning and what information I feel like that they need to know. That people were saying that in the beginning, like, well, now that y'all are home with your kids, it's a good time to teach your kids how to cook. And, I was irritated with them throwing up the middle finger at everybody. I mean, not for real, but I'm just kidding. But, I'm not. However, it's some truth to that. That I done taught some kids around here how to cook. As you know, we had a house fire, and so that was a very traumatic situation for us, cooking and reintroducing ourselves to that. But I'm like, look, we home now, so y'all gotta learn how to cook. We're gonna redo these French fries. It's time if you're gonna burn something down, burn the detached. Right, just get the detached garage if you're gonna do it. But anyway, so that's been exciting. I've started to talk with them about finances and the economy. We're looking at stock, like different things that I'm seeing. Now that I'm seeing how we're disproportionately affected, I'm looking at ways that I can teach them in preparation. And the racial injustice, all of that, they are all my older children and my youngest child, too. We're talking about racism and things. And so we are seeing things, and things are being taught in a way that it wasn't being taught to me. So I do see the benefits. When I was in school at this age, we were going to the Williamsburg plantations. It's field trips. So I'm excited about this being a time where that's no longer what we're going to be learning, matter of fact. And me being able to put words, because even as a child, I was uncomfortable with it, but now I'm able to put words to, we should not be going here as a place of retreat. This is not if you do well and you make good money, you can have your weekends and summers here too experience. So there's some good stuff in it, but I hate it here. I really do. No.
You just really are struggling, aren't you? So ladies, how do you react then when you hear the president say he's going to pull back federal funding if schools don't open? I mean, this is a conundrum for parents that is, let me go to you, Carol, first. What's your reaction to that?
My first reaction is that it's a state and local budgetary item. It does not come from the national government. And so he does not have that authority. The governor and the mayors of the cities determine that. The second of it is that I think it shows he has absolutely no understanding of how educational systems work, even on the college level. So I think he needs to talk to his education cabinet member, although I must admit she's not the brightest either. and he needs help in that area.
Well, schools. Let me clarify one thing though. Schools do receive federal funding, in addition to state and local funding. But I hear your point in terms of making some decisions. And Daun, am I incorrect in that? I see you staring at me.
Well, that's because Congress does the appropriation. President doesn't have anything to do with the appropriation.
Okay. But federal funds do flow to the schools.
Yes.
Okay. That's the point I wanted to make. But I hear you, Carol, in terms of local jurisdictions having to make decisions based on what is best for that local jurisdiction. Hang on one second. I'll come to the rest of you in just a minute. But if you're just joining us, we're talking about ways to eliminate systemic racism and the coronavirus and a lot of other things with the Another View Roundtable. Entrepreneur and relationship expert Alvean Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow, and entrepreneur and comedian Allison Moore. So, Alvean, your response to the president's taking the threat to take away federal funding.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with his interest in how well our children are taken care of at all. Unfortunately, what I find to be true with this president over and over and over again is that the decisions are made in a way that he perceives to best galvanize his voting base to ensure his next 4 years. That it doesn't matter how many people are impacted. It doesn't matter. I mean, literally at the Trump rally in Tulsa, the participants had to sign a disclaimer that they would not sue the campaign in the event that they caught COVID. Now, if COVID is not that big a deal, and if the president is so sure that like 0.1% of people practically will ever get it, and it will be mild, like, the seasonal, like a seasonal cold, maybe the flu even. And he was like suggesting it's not even as bad as the flu. That why did you need to sign a waiver for your life to attend the rally? So I find it very interesting that over and over again, it's more important that his ego is stroked and that he has what it is that he needs, even if it costs American lives. Remember, this thing was supposed to just disappear one day.
Yeah.
That this is, Americans, we may lose a couple thousand, but it's going to be less than the flu. On Fox News for 3 months, it was practically a hoax. This was just to get, Biden reelected. We politicize something that has nothing to do with politics. This is about people. And now we have lost 130,000 Americans. 130,000 gone. And we are still negotiating this as if it were a political football when politics should never step before the lives of the people. So now it's children. Even it doesn't even matter if it's kids that get sick. I'm disappointed over and over again. Just disappointed.
Well, on top of coronavirus, we've also had this major disruption in terms of race relations in our country. The George Floyd incident obviously was the catalyst. I call it the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's been things that have been going on for a very long time. Normally, we see or we expect of our leaders to bring us together, to try to end a divide between races, between genders, between differences. But over the 4th of July weekend, a president made a speech at Mount Rushmore. And I want you all to listen to a soundbite, parts of the speech that we pulled to just kind of get a sense of what he had to say. And we can talk about whether or not you felt it was inclusive and inviting or divisive and furthering the racial divide.
One of their political weapons is cancel culture, driving people from their jobs, shaming dissenters, and demanding total submission from anyone who disagrees. This is the very definition of totalitarianism, and it is completely alien to our culture and to our values, and it has absolutely no place in the United States of America. This attack on our liberty, our magnificent liberty, must be stopped, and it will be stopped very quickly. We will expose this dangerous movement, protect our nation's children, end this radical assault, and preserve our beloved American way of life. In our schools, our newsrooms, even our corporate boardrooms, there is a new far-left fascism that demands absolute allegiance. If you do not speak its language, perform its rituals, recite its mantras, and follow its commandments, then you will be censored, banished, blacklisted, persecuted, and punished. It's not going to happen to us. Make no mistake, this left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. In so doing, they would destroy the very civilization that rescued billions from poverty, disease, violence, and hunger, and that lifted humanity to new heights of achievement, discovery, and progress.
So, united or divided? Let me start with Carol. Let's start with Carol on this one first.
I think that for me, it's obvious. It's very divisive. And instead of saying, well, let us work and get together and solve problems of poverty, of the health crisis, of educational crisis. Maybe we have some disagreements, but we need to come together. He is not unifying at all. And the whole idea of I think if he had been a president who talked more about unifying the country rather than concentrating on the divisiveness within our society, perhaps we would be further along in even addressing the health issues that we have, because he has not talked about that. All he's worried about is galvanizing his base for a reelection, and that's what is apparent from that speech.
Daun?
It was divisive, but it was a clear, I don't even want to say revelation because we've been seeing him for the last 3 or so years. It was just who he is and who the people are that who support him. And their thinking, because, you have to look at people's way of thinking in order to try to figure out how do you even get together for a conversation. Mm-hmm. When you are a racist, you're a racist, and it doesn't change until you're willing to talk about what it is that you think, with me, what might be a little different and why my experience might be a little different, and you being kind of open to that. Mm-hmm. There isn't that kind of exchange from this president and those who support him. So we are in a critical juncture of, I don't want to leave his 40% behind, because they are Americans, even though what they believe is totally different from what I believe, but my experiences are different. I see their experience right now as being a part of fear and not losing their power and control, and that is a big part of it for many. If you look at the age range of the individuals that are supporting him, even though they are training up their children and grandchildren to be the same, because you learn what's in your house. Mm-hmm. They are trying to keep what they believe is the best thing for America. And then there are those of us who believe that all of us can live in America And all of us want an opportunity, but we're not getting it. And the door isn't being opened for us to have it. And that's what we've been fighting for so long. And, George Floyd's death visually has caused this. And we're just not going to stop until we correct things. And there are a lot of things that need to be corrected across the country and across the world.
Yeah, because that's the thing. As the protests, there's still protests continuing now, but they've certainly slowed in the past few weeks compared to immediately following the death of George Floyd. So the bigger question and the conversation for the rest of our hour is, what do we need to ask for? What do we need to demand as we move forward? Because things have to change, and it's got to be more than all of a sudden, you go out and read, a book, or you have a conversation with a person who doesn't look like you. It's got to go past that, because we're talking about systemic racism, Alvean.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. The thing that I know to be 100% true is that if you exist in homogenous circles, you are speaking inside of echo chambers. So you just hear exactly what it is that you want to hear. You're looking for affirmation of your already existing viewpoint. And many of those viewpoints are deeply limited by the fact that you haven't had any significant or intimate exposure. So your world is the world. And people conflate feelings and facts. Because you feel a particular way, you treat it as if your feelings are facts. And the reality is, all they are is feelings, and many of them rooted in nothing that is actually accurate. So one of the things that I would love to see happen, and I do believe is a meaningful way in which we can start to shift the needle, is that I want to see African American education done from K through 12 as a requirement inside of our curriculum. And I don't mean like 1 week out of the entire curriculum. I mean integrated into every facet of our education. So when you are in English, and I went through all advanced placement English, and I had to read all of the classics. Guess what? Not one was Black. Not one classic was considered, well, not one thing that was considered a classic was Black. Not one Black author. So when we start looking at what are your required readings, what are you responsible for making sure that you have explored, that you have examined, you have looked at contrasts and conflicts inside of, it needs to be required that includes African American authors. It needs to be required when we're doing history, that we actually know all of the contributions that African Americans have made to the very things that you're experiencing every single day as comforts. The refrigerator, the light, the light signals, there's so many things we could go into forever and ever that are all contributions of African Americans, but nobody knows about them because you're not taught that. So for many people, as I work with my white, or I like to say vanilla friends, but as I work with my friends, we have to have these conversations because many of the things I'm saying to them, they've never heard before. They've never been exposed to these perspectives or understandings. So if they don't have a Black friend, they're never going to hear this information. So I want to see this stuff ingrained into the educational system. And that's how you don't have to tell people Black Lives Matter. They know that they matter because they were educated in the ways in which African Americans have contributed to their lives since the beginning of time. So I want to see an overhaul of our educational system so that we don't have to try to fix adults. We can actually make sure that we nurture children instead.
There was an article, Allison, in the believe it's the New York Times. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's the Washington Post. It's an opinion piece that came out today, and it's by Eddie C. Brown, and it's entitled, "I'm a Black CEO. I've been discounted on Wall Street because of my skin color." And there's a quote that he has in here that I just thought was so profound, where he says, "America does not breed talent. It prefers to breed generational elitism, where very few minorities get to compete on a level playing field." Allison, you're an entrepreneur. You're out here trying to make a business work. Do you see that as, do you understand his perspective, or do you agree with his perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the skill sets and a lot of the virtues that contribute to being a successful entrepreneur are not things that are taught from an American education type of process or lens or philosophy, which then that's how you become the outlier, is because you lean into these supernatural talents and gifts that were embedded in you, or that your parents that were these unicorns forced down your throat, as opposed to you being cultivated in an environment at large that highlights those components. But I saw that in corporate America, where it's not necessarily trying to breed talent, which to me is one of the large reasons why I got fired from my last job that I worked at traditionally 5 years ago in corporate America in human resources. I got a leadership position that my maturity and my exposure was not ready to handle. I had not been brought up in an elitist environment. I didn't know which spoons, forks to eat with. I didn't know. I wasn't taught don't go to a business dinner and eat and order spaghetti or pasta. I didn't understand how to communicate about golf or sit through those conversations. Therefore, I missed out on intimate opportunities that would have helped me to be mentored and taken me to that next level. You know, when I was in environments where there's one or two other black women that would say, "Okay, girl, let me bring you into my coattail, or let me talk to you, let me school you, let me put you on game, don't wear this, don't do," these types of things, then I was more successful. But when I was in an environment where I didn't have anybody who looked like me or who had a personal vested interest in my success as a black person or as a young woman, then I definitely suffered. And it was not because I didn't have talent. It was because I didn't know the rules of the game for elitists.
Daun.
Yes. Well,
he also, yeah, I know that's a lot, but he also says, in the words of Frederick Douglass, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." What do we need to ask for? What are we demanding as we move forward?
Well, first I want to thank Allison for sharing that, because we have a lot of people in our communities who are trying to be successful with what they know. Go ahead, girl. And so we have to make sure, too, as people of color, that we're sharing that information with our children as they're coming up and going through school, so that when they hit it, they at least know where they need to come if they get in a situation that's uncomfortable. So that's one thing that we've got to do just as parents and mentors to our young people. I would like to see housing reassessed, because my house that I have in Norview looks the same square footage in houses that are in Ghent, yet their value is higher than mine. But just because it sits there, mine in Norview, theirs in Ghent, their assessed value is higher. That's one thing that every city can do right now. And that gives me more wealth to my black family, just like it does to the other families on the other side of town. That's one thing that can be automatically done. It doesn't have to go through a commission and all that kind of stuff, because, I'm kind of like jacked up with starting a commission, because that we got enough books on the shelves about poverty, and you know what I'm talking about, especially in Norfolk, that the book is on the shelf and nobody ever did anything because the poverty rate's still the same. Okay, so I'm sidetracked. Private companies. I want private companies to look at their structure. If there's nobody that is black or brown in your higher level, you need to find somebody. If you don't know how to find somebody, just call any one of us and we can help you with the hiring process. We will help you with the interview process. But your higher structure, your management team cannot be all white, period. You got to change that. In law firms, if you don't have a black lawyer, at least one, you really should have more than one, then you need to get one. If you need help finding them, we can help you find them. Do I have a list? If your boards that manage your organizations are all white, you need to diversify. There are many people out here who can help you do that. So that is one thing that you can do. We're not going to read books. We're going to learn from each other. You can read a book too, but that'll help you with the conversation. Education, we got to get to the equity issue. There's some districts that have more, some schools that have more based on all that. So we've got to get that. And this is not something that's going to be solved quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to, every city, every organization, every district needs to be able to measure what they're doing annually to make it better. And citizens have to demand that of their locality. What did we do to make things equitable? What did we do to make things more inclusive? And you need to be able to speak to it. And that's not at the local level, it's at the state and at the federal level as well. Because everything that I have sent to Joe Biden and talked with the team about is when he gets in that office, because y'all, we better get him in that office, excuse me very much, I'm still sidetracked, is that I'm not sidetracked, it's just who I am. We have to make sure that even what we expect of him is measurable and done.
And
so
we need to hold
office.
all of our politicians to that standard.
Because it's the politicians that set the rules. So that's why we got to vote. Okay, I'm finished for now.
Okay, let's go to Richard in Newport News. Hi, Richard, you're on the air.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Two points. I work in the real estate industry, and I can assure you that the houses are valued according to the sales in the neighborhood. It's not an equity I'm not sure where she was going with that, but it's based on the sales in your neighborhood. So the same house, whether it's in Alexandria or it's in Miami, two entirely different values. It's based on where the house sits and the sales in the neighborhood ultimately. But my bigger point is I listen to your show regularly, and I don't hear anything about illegitimacy and the effect on poverty and academic performance. If 75% illegitimacy in Black America is a huge problem. It's 40% nationally, 30%. It's a really big deal, and y'all don't talk about it.
Okay, I'm going to let Alvean take that one, and then I'm going to let Daun respond to you about the her point about housing. Alvean?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, and that is in no way to suggest that, Richard's question, because it is his question legitimately, is, not a legitimate question. First, I want to let you know that the word illegitimacy is an inappropriate word to describe children that are born outside of wedlock, if that's what you're referencing, right? So one person's life is not illegitimate as a byproduct of the fact that they, created by God, came into this world in circumstances that are a little different than the privilege of having two parents inside of a household. So I suggest that we're cautious about how we define life, since naturally all lives matter. So then I would like to say that it is important for us to actually understand that how we come to these numbers are a byproduct of a system that is rigged in a particular direction. And that is not to suggest that people aren't able to succeed as exceptions to the system. But just because there's an exception to the system, like somebody who's able to hold their breath for 4 minutes underwater in a swimming pool, does not suggest that that is the rule of thumb. So our goal as Americans is to create a system that allows a level playing field so that those who are willing to work hard can benefit from the fruits of their efforts. But if the playing field is stacked against you, it's very much like running a 100-meter race, and one set of people get to start that run 5 seconds before the others. And while 5 seconds, somebody will say, seems insignificant, when you're running a 100-meter race, 5 seconds is the difference between being halfway through the race versus the others. That economic privilege that is a byproduct of housing inequities and disparities has generational impact. And that generational impact will long-term interfere with the people's ability to rise from poverty because they are starting at -10 when some of us are starting at +12. So we need to consider the playing field and the factors associated with the playing field. And if injustice makes it such that when you drive down the street and you're driving too fast and somebody stops you and says, "Sir, you shouldn't drive that fast. You need to be careful. You know, I trust that you won't make this mistake again." And then when somebody else drives down that street and they don't look like you and they get stopped, and instead, because they can't afford the attorney because they're going to court, they're now dealing with a different cost associated with that, with a different impact. And then when they lose their license, they can't go to work. And when they can't go to work, they can't pay the bills. And when they can't pay the bills, they can't afford. See, there's this thing that happens when the system is different from one person to another, and we don't always recognize the cumulative impact of those things. So let's make sure that when we share information, it's legitimate.
And Daun, you wanted to respond to his question about, or his statement about real estate and it being different because of the neighborhood and how things are sold.
Yes, and we need to go back historically and look at redlining, and then you will understand that some areas are not valued the same as others depending on who lives in those houses. So it is not, I understand that, yes, the way the system is set up now, it is based on how houses sell in your neighborhood. But historically, if you go back and look, you will see that certain neighborhoods were assessed one way and other neighborhoods were assessed another way. So the equity in the assessment needs to be corrected for every home in every city based on what the square footage is, the style, the design, and all those other things. There should not be a difference. And it should not be based on what a house sells for. So the whole system needs to be changed. And as a realtor, I hope that you'll be a part of helping to make that happen. So thank you so much for calling and sharing. We really do appreciate it.
And Allison, we got 3 minutes left. You wanted to talk about counterculture a little bit. I know.
You want to do me like that. You know I got a big mouth.
I know.
All right, here we go. You ready? Y'all ready? All right, listeners, we got to go. We got to move. So cancer culture with when we were playing the Trump little situation, first of all, it reminds me of when we were younger, when I was a teenager, and my mother and her friends would hear slang terms or trendy terms and then redefine them and we'd be like, "Mom, what are you talking about?" And I feel like that's exactly what's happening with cancel culture. First of all, it's like a slang term that happened 3 years ago. People were like, "Oh, they cancel," which means we are unsubscribing to maybe the fandom that we had or the theory that we followed of yours or whatever. And so now it's taken on this peak, and now it's like this whole culture, and that's a fear to me. That's people trying to run away from being held accountable. It says if you can't be called out, if you're wrong, you're wrong. You in the public, you on social. If you post a picture on Instagram and your background is dirty or your mirror is dirty, I'm talking about you. You canceled.
And there you go. And ladies, that we are out of time. Thank you so very much. As always, we'll see you the second Thursday next month. And thank you for kicking off our 10th year on the air. And thank you so much for spending an hour of your life with us. If you'd like to hear this show again or check it out or check out any of our other shows, visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. Please also sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs, and you can always find us on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. A reminder to you, the pandemic is not over. Let's keep Virginia coronavirus numbers as low as possible. Wear a mask, wash your hands, social distance. Please, let's all keep each other safe. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer. And Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. Let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee.